Okay, so today we're going on a deep dive into the world of a pretty unique monkey.
Unique is an understatement, I think.
Yeah, it's the Niger Delta Red Colobus monkey.
A critically endangered primate,
Right. And we'll be taking a close look at what makes this monkey so special.
and why they're facing such a tough time right now.
Yeah, and what's being done to help them.
So to kick things off, this monkey is actually relatively new to science.
Really?
Yeah, it was only discovered back in 1993.
Wow, so they were like hidden in plain sight all that time?
Pretty much. And they've got some really distinctive features starting with their faces.
Yeah, those black faces are pretty striking.
Right, and then you've got that reddish-brown fur.
And those crazy long tails I was reading about?
Oh yeah, those tails could actually get longer than their bodies.
No way.
Seriously, it's true. And those tails are super important for their survival.
Well, I guess that makes sense. They spend most of their time up in the trees.
Exactly. It's like their own little jungle gym up there.
And get this, they don't have thumbs.
Nope, no thumbs,
Mm.
which is pretty unusual for a primate.
So how do they manage to swing through the trees without thumbs?
That's where the tail comes in. It acts like a counterbalance, helping them move gracefully through the canopy.
So no thumbs is actually an advantage for them up there.
It is in this case, yeah.
Wow, nature is full of surprises.
It really is. And speaking of surprises, their diet is pretty interesting too.
Oh yeah, what do they eat?
Well, they're primarily leaf eaters, but they've got this special adaptation.
What's that?
They have a multi-chambered stomach, kind of like a cow.
A cow. What does that have to do with leaves?
It allows them to break down tough, fibrous leaves that other primates can't digest.
So they're like the ultimate vegans of the monkey world.
You could say that, and they're not doing it alone either.
Oh, right. They're super social.
Very much so. They live in groups that can range from 10 to 80 individuals.
Wow, that's a lot of monkeys.
It is, and that social structure is really important for their survival.
Oh, so
Well, for starters, more eyes mean better protection from predators.
that makes sense.
And it also makes finding food a lot easier.
Like a team effort.
Exactly. And then there's the social learning aspect. The younger monkeys can learn from the more experienced ones.
It's like a little primate school up in the trees.
Uh-huh. You could say that, but unfortunately their home isn't exactly the safest place these days.
Right, their habitat to them. The freshwater swamp forests of the Niger Delta.
It's a really unique and fragile ecosystem.
And it's under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's facing threats from all sides, pollution changes in water levels, and of course, human activities.
Like deforestation.
Exactly, deforestation for agriculture logging, and then there's the oil industry.
The Niger Delta is known for its oil, right?
It is, and unfortunately, oil exploration and extraction have taken a heavy toll on the environment.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? This resource that's supposed to fuel progress
Right.
is actually harming the very environment it comes from.
It's a complex issue for sure, and it's not the only threat these monkeys are facing.
You're talking about hunting.
Yeah, unfortunately, hunting for bushmeat is a major problem in the region.
And it's not just for survival, right?
No, there's also a commercial aspect to it.
And remember how we talked about those tight-knit social groups?
Yeah,
Doesn't that make them more vulnerable to hunters?
absolutely. If one monkey gets caught or injured, the others often stay close by.
It's like their loyalty to each other becomes a weakness.
It does in this situation, and all of these factors have combined to create a very serious situation for the Niger Delta Red Colobus monkey.
Yeah, we mentioned that they're critically endangered, but what exactly does that mean?
It means that, according to the IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, they're facing a very real threat of extinction.
Wow, so this is a full-blown crisis.
It is.
But I know there are people out there working hard to save them.
There are some amazing conservation efforts underway.
And that's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
It's encouraging to see that there's a lot of energy being put into protecting the Niger Delta Red Colobus monkey.
Yeah, it seems like people are finally starting to realize how special these monkeys are.
Definitely. And what's really interesting is that a lot of the focus is shifting towards working with local communities.
Yeah, I was going to say, conservation can't just be about setting boundaries and telling people to stay away.
Right. You have to involve the people who live in and around these forests.
Exactly. So how are they doing that?
Well, education is a big part of it.
Makes sense.
When people understand why this particular monkey is so important to the whole ecosystem.
It's like finding out you have a rare plant in your backyard, suddenly you're paying more attention to it.
Precisely. It helps foster a sense of responsibility and pride.
And it's not just about the ecological value, right?
No, there's also the cultural and economic aspects.
Right.
Conservationists are working to provide alternative livelihoods for people who might otherwise depend on things like hunting or logging.
So giving them sustainable options that benefit both their families and the environment.
Exactly. There are programs that promote sustainable agriculture, ecotourism, even beekeeping.
Beekeeping, that's cool.
It's a great way to generate income without harming the forest.
Okay, so we're addressing the human side of things, but what about protecting the habitat itself?
Well, establishing protected areas is definitely crucial.
Like national parks and reserves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those places act as safe havens for the monkeys and other wildlife.
But with all the threats we talked about earlier, are those protected areas enough?
They're a great start, but you need more than just lines on a map.
It's like building a house. You need strong walls, but you also have to maintain them.
Exactly. It's about active management, monitoring populations, controlling invasive species, preventing illegal logging.
It's a lot of work.
It is. And then there's the issue of habitat fragmentation.
Right, we touched on that earlier. It's like taking a beautiful tapestry and cutting it into pieces.
Exactly. When forests are chopped up, the remaining patches become isolated.
And that makes the monkey populations more vulnerable.
Right. They're more susceptible to inbreeding disease, even local extinction.
So how do you fix that? Do you, like, stitch the tapestry back together?
The idea is to create wildlife corridors.
Wildlife corridors.
Yeah, it's like creating strips of habitat that connect those fragmented areas, allowing animals to move freely.
So they can go visit their relatives in the next forest over.
Exactly. And it's not just about the monkeys. The monkeys' wildlife corridors benefit a whole range of species.
So it helps the entire ecosystem.
Right. It boosts biodiversity and makes the whole system more resilient.
This is really highlighting how interconnected everything is in nature.
It is. We often forget that.
So speaking of connections, what about the role of research in all this?
Research is absolutely essential. It's like being a detective in the rainforest.
Trying to piece together clues about the monkeys.
Exactly. Scientists are using all sorts of techniques to gather information.
Like what kind of techniques?
Well, there are camera traps, DNA analysis, tracking their movements, studying their behavior.
So it's not just about knowing how many monkeys are left, but understanding how they live.
Right. And all that information helps conservationists develop more effective strategies.
So you can move from just reacting to threats to actually anticipating them.
Precisely. It's like having a roadmap to guide conservation efforts.
Okay, so research is helping us understand the monkeys better. But what about actually enforcing the laws that are supposed to protect them?
That's where law enforcement comes in. You need trained rangers on the ground.
To patrol the protected areas.
Right, to stop poachers and illegal loggers.
It's a tough job.
It is, but absolutely crucial. And it's not just about top-down enforcement either.
Right, there's a growing trend of involving local communities in conservation.
Exactly. It's about empowering those communities to become the protectors of their own natural heritage.
I like that it recognizes that the people who live in these areas are the best stewards of their environment.
And it's proving to be incredibly effective. When communities are invested in conservation, they become really passionate advocates.
Because they understand that we're all connected to the natural world in one way or another.
Exactly, and that what happens to these monkeys ultimately affects us all. But we'll delve into the organizations making a difference in the next part.
And we're back for our final look at the Niger Delta Red Colobus monkey. And,
It's really fascinating to see how much effort is going into saving this species.
yeah, it's pretty inspiring.
I think so too.
But I guess it also makes you think about the bigger picture.
Yeah, like what does it say about our relationship with the natural world?
Right, it's easy to get caught up in the details, but ultimately this is about the choices we're making.
Absolutely. Our actions have consequences.
And sometimes those consequences are felt far beyond our immediate surroundings.
Exactly what happens in the Niger Delta doesn't stay in the Niger Delta.
And it's not just about the monkeys either.
Right. It's about the entire ecosystem.
And how that ecosystem impacts people.
Yeah, both locally and globally.
So it's really a wake-up call, isn't it?
It is, in a way.
But it's also a reminder that we have the power to change things.
We do. And there's a lot of positive momentum happening right now.
Yeah, we've talked about some of the amazing work being done by scientists and conservationists.
And local communities are playing a vital role, too.
Right, it's not just about top-down solutions anymore.
Exactly. It's about empowering people to protect their own natural heritage.
And that's where I think things get really interesting.
How so?
Well, it's about recognizing that conservation isn't just the responsibility of a select few.
Right. It's something we can all contribute to.
Yeah, whether we're scientists or policymakers or just everyday people.
Exactly.
So what can listeners do to help?
Well, the first step is education.
Learning more about the Niger Delta Red Colobus monkey.
Right. The more you understand the issues, the more effective you can be as an advocate.
Knowledge is power.
It really is. And you can also support organizations that are working in the region.
Even a small donation can make a difference.
Absolutely. And then there are the choices we make every day.
Like what we buy and who we support with our money.
Exactly. Think about the environmental impact of the products you choose.
It's about voting with your wallet.
I like that. And don't underestimate the power of your voice.
Right. Talk to your friends and family, share information online, contact your elected officials.
The more people who care about this issue, the more likely we are to see real change.
So it's about finding those little things we can do in our own lives.
And realizing that those little things can add up to something much bigger.
Exactly. And as we wrap up our deep dive, I think that's a great message to leave people with.
Yeah. What will you do to make a difference?
How will you use your knowledge, your passion, and your influence to help create a more sustainable future?
It's a question worth pondering.
It is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the Niger Delta Red Colobus monkey.